Do you know who I am? I'm kind of a big deal.
Welcome to Overtime with Dr. Michael Jacobs, a former Orioles physician. I'm Chip Franklin, and this is where we talk about injuries, Doc. And one of the things I wanted to ask you is the guys that play the game, for a career, or anywhere from 10 to 20 years. 20 years after they're out of the game, how much are they still carrying with them as far as injuries go? And without we can get into names of people that we know that that possibly juiced and got injured, or people that didn't later. And does that make a difference? Well, how many things go into being able to live the rest of your life without the kind of chronic pain that I hear a lot of athletes have?
Well, as I've said many times before, as Ray Miller said to me once, pitching is a chronic overuse condition. So certainly humans weren't made to throw. So if you were in a throwing position, a pitcher, catcher, shortstop, a lot of those players will have some chronic shoulder issues, rotator cuff things that would affect their ability to do certain overhead activities, not so much golf. But I would say, excluding head injuries, because I don't want to get into the NFL and brain injuries, I think the biggest problem most athletes have are spine injuries, particularly in this world of metrics and analytics and spin rates. If you look at almost every sport in today's world, your power comes from core rotation. And in pitching, it's torquing your body to get the velocity and the leverage on your arm. Clearly, in hitting, you're torquing your spine. If you look at most of these golfers who are hitting the ball 350 yards, granted with the technology, but if you look at a Freddie Couples, he can almost torque himself all the way around.
Sure.
And the spine rotation you need to generate that velocity tends to really catch up to you. And if you look at most of the senior golfers, they almost all have spine disease. And if you watch a lot of these guys degrade with their distance, it's because they can't torque their spines as much. And so I think as all sports have gotten into the scientific aspect of how you create velocity, they're getting a tremendous number of spine injuries.
With golf,
golf is really one of the worst, but now pitching and hitting are too. I'm sorry, please continue.
No, when you mentioned golf, though, do you remember the stack and tilt when they were teaching that for a while, and they got away from that because it was a violent approach to coming down on the ball. And I look at these guys, and I love to go up. I live in San Diego, and I'm right near one of the tours stops. The first stop, actually, the Farmers Tour. Now you can go up there and you can talk to the guys hitting it on Tuesday, and it's great because you can ask them. They'll pretty much talk to anybody when they're putting. They enjoy talking to fans, and these guys are. People don't realize that. You see football collisions, you go, "Well, that's got to hurt," but there's a lot of people playing professional sports that get injured, and they carry this through their career because that's their paycheck. And Jim Palmer, who I've done some events with, and really well, and other athletes that threw a lot. Jim would throw, a lot of complete games. I think he threw in a couple seasons, each one of those seasons, more complete games than now that you get in the entire major leagues. You add them all up. That, I think about these guys. Bill Walton here in San Diego has spoken about this before. He was in such pain, he contemplated suicide. These guys, when they leave the sport, they carry this with them, and I guess they know it going in, but you said you see it more with pitchers than maybe like a catcher who has that odd position all those years, or maybe outfielders. Like I talked to Adam Jones, and we play golf, and I could see his hips hurt him. There's a lot going on there that people don't see that causes these kind of chronic injuries that they're, back in the day, they played through. Do they not as much now? And will these kids today not have this chronic pain when they retire later?
Well, that's a complex question. I don't know that the players today are any different from the players in the past. I've had more than one player say, "Doc, do whatever you can. I got a small window to play, and let's do it." I think what's different is that, for example, catchers, particularly you see a big guy like Adley or Charles Johnson, and the amazing one is Fisk, who's pretty big, or tall at least. They kind of beat on their knees pretty good. And unlike in many, many years ago, if you get and you're older and you get your knee replaced, it's not as good as your original knee, but it gives you a functionality that allows you to do most normal things and play golf, certainly. So I think some of the reconstructive procedures are better. particularly for catchers. I think a lot of catchers have had chronic knee issues. I've had more than one catcher say to me, "Doc, what are my knees going to look like when I'm 70?" Similarly, a lot of the upper extremity reconstructive procedures can be a lot improved. In terms of the spine injuries, that gets a little dicier. I've never been a spine surgeon, but pretty much there are artificial discs, but they're limited indications in a lot of people. Basically, when your back starts going, you start fusing levels, and the more levels you fuse, the stiffer you get, and the stiffer you get, the less you can torque.
Right.
So I think spine issues continue to be a problem. I do think the players are smarter today and not getting as many cortisone injections, which we can get into at another time, as the cortisone was pretty much all you could do until the mid 80s. And they have short-term advantages, long-term problems.
They feel good though. When you get a cortisone shot, like a knee that we have pain, and you go like, "Oh my God, I'm 25 again." I mean, it's amazing.
Well, usually that first day has some numbing medicine, so you get artificially juiced up on that. But I do think that we're a lot more sophisticated in long-term things, but the players still want to play. And you can see Charlie Morton's pitching at 41. I suspect he's financially stable. He just likes pitching.
Right.
And the fact of the matter is, one of the difficulties of assessing players, and that's where the docs do come into play, is that all of these pitchers in their 30s, their MRIs don't look very good. And Charlie Morton's a perfect example. I'm sure his scans show the wear and tear of many, many innings of pitching, and they don't look very good. Yet the last 3 years, he's pitched adequately. So when you gamble on a pitcher like that, you're saying, well, is this the year he's going to fall off the cliff, or can I squeeze another year out of him? And that's a chronic situation. And as I think mentioned to you earlier off camera, I remember one pitcher in particular I nixed for the Orioles in the 90s. He had absolutely no ulnar collateral ligament, no Tommy John ligament. When he was examined, his elbow was unstable. We didn't sign him, yet he pitched as a short inning reliever, winning at a time. He pitched successfully for 2 more years. And without naming names, the rumor was that a number of veteran pitchers who were extremely effective pitched without ulnar collateral ligaments. So strangely enough, some players can pitch that way or play that way. And everybody's geometry is better. A lot of players who I've replaced tips on, who were former major league players, happen to be fairly stiff players, and they kind of forced motion in their hips and got away with it. Yet their x-rays didn't look very good. Again, I can remember one player we looked at whose hip was horrible, and we didn't sign him, and yet he was a DH, I think, for the Red Sox a year and played adequately before he got his hip replaced. So it's very hard to evaluate veteran players who don't look good on paper, yet still seem to be performing. You're just spinning the dice on to see if they can play. And remember, Jim Palmer, again, is an exceptional athlete, great golfer, very good tennis player, can play tennis with both hands, in fact, probably could play golf with both hands. But he told me one year he pitched 400 innings between spring training, complete games, playoffs, and then the team went to Japan, and he had to pitch the Japanese tour. So he essentially threw 400 innings one year, and by the time he finished in Japan, it was almost time for spring training. So he didn't really have a good off season.
Well, John, let me jump in there. I was watching this special, and Goose Gossage, before they had the term closer, he would come in and pitch sometimes 7th, 8th, and 9th 2 or 3 times a week. So he was throwing like 9 innings a week at full speed gas. And, I just wonder, I look at today, and I know these are just as good athletes today, and they were trying to protect them. But God, if the Mountain could throw 3 innings 3 times a week, right?
As you're aware, Goose Gossage started out as a starter for Pittsburgh, I believe.
Right.
And so he was kind of groomed to be a starter. But one of the positive things about agents, people like to diss agents, but I don't think it's the agent's fault that they can outsmart the baseball people sometimes. But in either event, I think the agents, one of their roles to justify themselves is to protect their players. And I do think that that's a positive. And if Scott Boras, who's a, king of the agents, he has an outstanding team behind him. that really does do a lot of off-season training. He does protect his players, and that's one of the positive aspects of it, even if he can be a very adversarial opponent when you're doing contracts.
So I would, back to your point about agents, I would think that one of their big negotiating things is saying, look, my guy's going to be, in the rest of his life is going to be carrying some of the scars of playing for 15 years in the major leagues and all those games in Florida and Arizona. And, I mean, it seems to me that the pain and what they go through afterwards, they'll sign on for that, for the glory and the love of the game for that time period. But I just don't think most people really understand, what these guys go through. Last question for you, though. I was seeing this thing on Bob Gibson, and Bob Gibson was farsighted, but sometimes he'd have to, he'd squint because he couldn't see. He didn't wear glasses, and it scared the batters because they thought he was making a mean face. And he said, "No, I was just squinting because I couldn't read McCarver's signs." I'm trying to think. Do you know any pitchers that wear glasses? Are there a few now that wear them? And is that more? Because Ted Williams said if he'd have had glasses, he'd have hit 500. Because he just would have seen the ball that much better. He had a little bit of a vision problem too, which is hard to believe. That's interesting. So, do you see that there's guys that don't want to wear glasses because it's they're batters and these pitchers are coming in at 95, or is it just not as many near or far-sighted guys in the bigs?
Well, first of all, I've worn glasses and have bad eyes since third grade. And let me tell you, vision is one of the most underrated aspects of a great athlete. Almost none of these guys wear glasses. Now, as Richie once said to me about one of our pitchers, he said, "Mike, he's not an athlete, he's a pitcher." Okay, and there's a history of chubby pitchers out there, including the Rick Russells, who were great fielders. And I can tell you, Sid Fernandez, who was a little on the heavy side, was a great golfer and very agile. So you can be a little chubby and be a good athlete. But from pitching point of view, a significant number of pitchers wear contact lenses, and that is what it is. Obviously, they don't have to hit the ball; they just throw it. I don't think there are many great hitters who wear glasses. I know Reggie Jackson wore glasses. I don't know how thick they were. I think it's a fantastic feat that he could play that way. I believe actually that Djokovic used to wear contacts if he didn't get corrective surgery, and that's amazing, hitting tennis balls the way he does. There are different aspects to vision, which include field of vision, acuity, and things like that. And so maybe some of those factors come into play, but there's no way in the world Ted Williams didn't have 20/10 vision, because he was an outrageous fighter pilot. And you can't tell me that landing, I believe he was a naval aviator too, although I'm not sure of that. You can't tell me landing on carriers at night and seeing, Chuck Yeager kind of vision. There's no way he could see better with glasses. And very few hitters to me can do it. We had an outfielder who was a big prospect who did have slightly below average vision, and he refused to wear contacts, and his career just disappeared because he just couldn't see well enough. And I can tell you, in spring training, before people got so legal back in the 90s when I started, I would go into minor league camp and try to just flag balls in batting practice. And I could tell you, I could barely see the ball off the bat from deep center field. So there's no way you could play the outfield if you don't have dynamite vision. So,
well, I saw this, Doc, that a fastball, 100-mile-an-hour fastball gets there in 0.396 milliseconds. That's quicker than you blink your eye. And it's interesting, a 92-mile-an-hour fastball gets there 4 feet later. So,
yeah, but I don't think when you're hitting, it makes that much difference because you're 60 feet, 6 inches from the hitter. So you can pretty much see that ball. When you're playing tennis and somebody drills you at the net, I could always see that. But I couldn't pick up the guy serving the way other people could.
Yeah.
I think it's the outfielders who really pick the ball. It's been rumored that Willie Mays would pick the signs up and kind of adjust his lead. They would say I hate it when they would say players have great anticipation. They don't have anticipation. They see the ball quicker.
Yeah, they play a long time.
Willie Mays. Robbie Alomar would say, he knew the pitchers, he knew the hitter, he'd read the sign. I'm sure Junior did that too. They would adjust and lean that way based on that.
You just
They
brought up
were
something. Hold on.
anticipating.
You just brought up something. I wonder now, with this little device in the ear of the pitcher and catcher, how do the infielders know what the pitch is now to adjust? In the past,
I
you
guess
could see.
I don't know. For some reason, I think one position player can wear that thing, if I'm not
Right.
mistaken. So maybe that's the guy who, I mean, it was always a rumor that Ripken was calling the pitches for some players. I don't know if that's true or not true, but it was always a rumor that with some younger pitchers, he would be kind of signaling the catcher somehow to make the call. But the same thing in football, when they would say, a Gretzky or a hockey Gretzky or a Dickerson has great anticipation. They didn't have great anticipation. They just had fields of vision where they would see the guy coming before other people would see it. And I've played tennis with people like that who would move so quick. I'd say, how did you move that quick? And they'd say, well, I just saw the ball. And I'm going, I didn't see it. And you can't tell me Gretzky or Bird or Magic Johnson. They just could see the whole field. And that does slow the game down when you can see where everybody is. And all of these sports, it's about just slowing the game down, isn't it?
Man, that's the truth. Doc, great stuff as always. Another overtime. We're going to get to the bottom of whether or not infielders can wear those things for the next show. I promise you on the next Bmore Baseball podcast. All right. Hey, thank you, Doc. Appreciate it, buddy. This again,
day.
you can find these overtimes on YouTube. And of course, you can find the Bmore Baseball podcast as well. That's Dr. Michael Jacobs, former Orioles physician. I'm Chip Franklin. Till next time.
Do you know who I am? I'm kind of a big deal.